Hello and welcome to New Poem Day here on Shakesyear. Today we're going to dig into what is actually the second of Shakespeare's epic poems. The first one that was published anyway was Venus and Adonis, and this one is The Rape of Lucrece. And apparently Venus and Adonis is much funnier than this one. This one being, as the title suggests, about sexual violence towards women. So content warning, for the next little bit we're going to be talking about sexual violence towards women. So if that's a trigger for you, you might want to, skip a little bit, maybe tune out for the next couple months. And I say the next couple months because this poem is epic. It is 1,859 lines long, which I believe comes out to like 265 7-line stanzas or something along those lines, which at 1,859 lines, that makes it longer than several of Shakespeare's plays. It's longer than As You Like It, Double Falsehood, Twelfth Night, Comedy of Errors, Much Ado About Nothing, and The Merry Wives of Windsor. So when I say we're going to be spending some time with this play, we're going to be spending some time with this play. And I've decided to just sort of arbitrarily split it up so that we do like 4 stanzas a day, because that seemed to be sort of digestible. And while yes, that might interrupt some thoughts or some specific passages along the way, it felt a little weird to do like 100 stanzas one day and 3 stanzas the next day. So just bear with me as we look at this about 4 stanzas at a time. We will do recaps and previews similarly to what we've been doing with the plays as those were going along. So if you go and you find a published version of The Rape of Lucrece, you will see that it starts off with a dedication to Henry Wriothesley, who was the Earl of Southampton and the Baron of Titchfield, and I probably pronounced his name horribly wrong just now, but we're not really going to dig into that introduction or dedication, because it's really just, here's this play for you, you awesome nobleman, and I'm not worthy, and everything that I have ever written is yours, and everything that I ever will write is yours, your humble servant, William Shakespeare. It's just kind of one of those things. But then before we get into the actual stanzas of the poem, there is also this argument that just sets the scene, because the stanzas get there partway through the story, and the story is based on actual Roman events that happened. So this argument that we're going to take a look at today just sets the scene and tells us who the characters are and that sort of thing. And the argument goes: Lucius Tarquinius, for his excessive pride surnamed Superbus, after he had caused his own father-in-law, Servius Tullius, to be cruelly murdered, and, contrary to the Roman laws and customs, not requiring or staying for the people's suffrages, had possessed himself of the kingdom, went, accompanied with his sons and other noblemen of Rome, to besiege Ardea. During which siege, the principal men of the army, meeting one evening at the tent of Sextus Tarquinius, the king's son, in their discourses after supper, every one commended the virtues of his own wife, among whom Collatinus extolled the incomparable chastity of his wife Lucretia. In that pleasant humor they posted to Rome, and intending, by their secret and sudden arrival, to make trial of that which everyone had before avouched, only Collatinus finds his wife, though it were late in the night, spinning amongst her maids. The other ladies were all found dancing and reveling or in several disports, whereupon the nobleman yielded Collatinus the victory, and his wife the fame. At that time, Sextus Tarquinius, being inflamed with Lucretia's beauty, yet smothering his passions for the present, departed with the rest back to the camp, from whence he shortly after privily withdrew himself, and was, according to his estate, royally entertained and lodged by Lucrece at Collatium. The same night he treacherously stealeth into her chamber, violently ravished her, and early in the morning speedeth away. Lucrece, in this lamentable plight, hastily dispatcheth messengers, one to Rome for her father, another to the camp for Collatine. They came, the one accompanied with Junius Brutus, the other with Publius Valerius, and, finding Lucrece attired in mourning habit, demanded the cause of her sorrow. She, first taking an oath of them for her revenge, revealed the actor and whole manner of his dealing, and withal suddenly stabbed herself. Which done, with one consent they all vowed to root out the whole hated family of the Tarquins. And bearing the dead body to Rome, Brutus acquainted the people with the doer and manner of the vile deed, with a bitter invective against the tyranny of the king. Wherewith the people were so moved that with one consent and a general acclamation the Tarquins were all exiled, and the state government changed from kings to consuls. So that's a lot. It's quite a mouthful for an argument and quite a setting of the scene. So basically what it is, there's the Tarquin family who are the kings, though Lucius Tarquinius wasn't necessarily supposed to be king. He just sort of took that title for himself after he had his father murdered. He was just like, okay, I'm king now. And he and his sons and a bunch of noblemen went to besiege the city of Ardea. And while they were laying siege to said city, all the noblemen are hanging out in Sextus Tarquinius' tent, Sextus Tarquinius being Lucius Tarquinius' son. They're all hanging out in Sextus Tarquinius' tent, and they're all talking about how virtuous all of their wives are. I have the most virtuous wife. No, I have the most virtuous wife. And Collatinius is married to Lucretia, and he's like, I have the most chaste and virtuous wife. So when they all get back to Rome, they sort of sneakily show up to find their wives so they can catch their wives doing whatever it is that their wives happen to be doing. And only Lucrece is still sitting there like doing embroidery and needlework with her maids. All of the other wives are out dancing and drinking and having fun and doing all this stuff. So all the noblemen have to sort of admit that Collatinius' wife Lucretia is the most virtuous of all of them. Sextus Tarquinius, meanwhile, finds Lucretia absolutely beautiful. So he goes back to the camp with all of them, but then sneaks away to get back to Collatine's house to stay there and be put up as an honored guest. And while he's there as an honored guest, he sneaks out of his room in the middle of the night and goes and rapes Lucretia and then leaves first thing in the morning. So she wakes up and she was very aware of what happened. She wasn't unconscious at the time. She knows that she was raped and she knows who raped her. So she wakes up in the morning and she sends messengers to get her dad and to get her husband to come home, and they come home with other powerful men. And she first says, you have to believe me and you have to avenge me, which, hashtag believe the victims, hashtag I believe her. They say, yes, they will. So then she tells the whole story of how Sextus Tarquinius came in and raped her, and she's rather graphic about it and feels terrible and feels all this shame about it. So she then stabs and kills herself immediately afterwards, which, if any of the viewers out there watching this video or reading this poem or have read this poem are survivors of sexual assault, please don't do what Lucretia did. Please go and find yourself some help first. There's plenty of phone numbers that you can call. There's plenty of friends that you can reach out to. Reach out to me and I will talk you out of it. Please don't tell your story and then immediately stab yourself. That's not the way to deal with it. That is the way that she chose to deal with it. And the result of her choosing to deal with it that way was that they took her body back to Rome and displayed her essentially for the Tarquins and said they did this to her. This is their fault, which got the general people so in a frenzy about it that the Tarquins were banished and they changed around the system of government so they would no longer have kings. They would have a consul as a ruling body instead of a monarchy. So that is setting the scene for this lovely 1,859 line poem that we're going to dig into over the next couple of months. It's some pretty heavy material, and apparently when it was published it maybe didn't sell quite as well as Venus and Adonis did because it's some pretty heavy material. It's Venus and Adonis is more comic, and then they get this one that's dealing with Roman politics and rape and all of this stuff. It apparently didn't sell quite as well. But anyway, come on back tomorrow and we'll get into the meat of the poem, which is going to tell us more of the actual story. Now that we know what the story is going to do, we're going to sort of join it partway through and we'll hear the story. So I'll see you tomorrow. Mwah.